If you are aiming for English fluency and you have finally got to the advanced levels, low advanced, you're almost there, right? We've got bad news for you. You're nowhere near close.
What's up, guys? Welcome to WaiGuo Friends English. After years of working with adult English language learners, we have found that people in the advanced levels, they have so much further to go than somebody starting from complete beginner going up through high intermediate. It's kind of discouraging, actually. They've only been through 20% of the journey by the time they finally reach the advanced level. After that, you've got 80% of the journey to go, and it's crazy. So we're going to talk about why this is. We're going to talk about some exceptions to this, and then we're going to talk about ways that you can speed things up.
When we say 80-20 rule, it's a very good rule because it looks like as an advanced English language learner, you are 80% of the way done. You only have one more word to go. And so you're 20% left, but in reality, you have to flip the equation. You're actually only 20% done with your journey. You have 80% left to go. And really it comes down to the nature of advanced English content.
You will have some advanced grammar and higher vocabulary to go through, but we're talking here about deepening things. If your aim is fluency, not just communication, but fluency, then you're going to be working on connecting words together that you didn't have them connected before. You're going to be deepening the understanding you have. You're going to be going back to your foundation, really getting into it, making sure you really have a grasp of it. Not that it's memorized, but that it's actually part of your active vocabulary. It's actually part of your skill set. And something that you're not just going to lose by not doing English for a while. You're also going to be creating that cultural background understanding and knowledge that you need in order to make those deeper connections and get images in your mind to back up what is actually being said. So ideally, you won't be just seeing the words in your head. You're not going to be just thinking of things that you've heard that word before, but you're going to be tying a mental image of that word, like a mental image of the action associated with that word or something associated with that word, so that it gives it really deep meaning. You're working with pictures in your mind as well. But creating that takes a lot of time and energy, and that's why we're saying it takes 80%.
The next 80% of your journey won't look like the previous 20% that you've already passed, and which is why this is deceptive. From complete beginner to where you are now, there is a large amount of space in there that is progressive. You progress very quickly. You're able to do things. You're able to express. You're able to memorize 1,000 vocabulary words. You're able to do things where you couldn't do them before. You're able to listen to that podcast and know pretty much exactly what's being said. You're able to read that book and all the way through. You're able to do things. And as you get to the advanced, you're like, wow. So what more can I do when I become fluent or advanced? The world just must open up and I see a whole new... It's not like that, though. In reality, when you become advanced to fluent, you're refining those skills. So it looks less glamorous. It's a lot less amazing than being able to sit down, smash out an entire 100 vocabulary set on flashcards and then memorize them the whole next day because you know the word for cat now. Yes! It's more like, wow, now I know the difference between two words like determined and resolved. What is the meaning of that? What's the feeling of that? I was listening to a podcast. He used determined. I didn't really know what it meant. And now I knew what resolved was, so I have this kind of, now I know. Wow, that's nice to know. It's a lot less, you're climbing a mountain, seeing this beautiful scenery. It's more like you're going down in the mine and bringing out more ore that you found after lots of digging already.
It's more begrudging in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it is rewarding because you get deeper. And as you go and as you continue, you're going to start making connections and creating this network. And you're going to be taking these things that you had simply memorized before, that you have kind of forgotten from lack of use, and then you see them, you recognize them, and you start to really work on them. And you start to tie them together to other things, and then to other things, and then to other things. And before long, you have a very well interconnected web or network of vocabulary, phrases, idioms, stories, grammar, the way that you would use this versus this, pronunciation and paralanguage. There's going to be so much richness, I guess, is what you're going for. But again, not everybody follows this journey. Some people take an advanced grammar book and they work through it just like they did with the same skills that they had in intermediate levels. We talk a lot about shifting gears from intermediate to advanced in order to get through this advanced stage a little bit easier. It's kind of like a journey of discovery. It's a journey of exploring and finding and then consolidating that information into a way that you can continue to remember and use it. It's taking things in that passive vocabulary, bringing it to the active so that you can use it. It's learning degrees of words. Which synonyms would I use for this feeling, this feeling, this feeling, this feeling? What's the range there? There's just so many things to unpack. The advanced levels are a lot of fun, actually. They are a lot of fun, but it's not something that's as measurable as it was before. In that first 20%, things were so much more measurable. And you were able to say, well, I couldn't order pizza, now I can. I couldn't do this, but now I can. But the advanced levels is more like, I can do it better. I could say it better. I understand that word that I think you said a lot, but it's the one word that I didn't really know or register before.
In this way, I kind of think of like our classes that we would teach when we lived abroad. We would teach the same classes. Sometimes we would teach the same exact lesson 8 times in 1 week, and by the end of it, man, it was a really good lesson. We were doing a really great job teaching this lesson because we've already taught it 8 times before. Every time we did it, every time we spoke the same information, we figured out better ways to tweak it, better ways to make it sound more impactful. And as a result, by the end of it, it was really good. But honestly, the very first time we taught a lesson, it was exciting because it was a new lesson. It was the few times after that where we see this big growth of like, wow, this is really good. And then only at like 6th, 7th, 8th time, we're only tweaking 1 or 2 things. But those tweakings, those little bits of adjustments and those 1% improvements actually make a lot of difference at the end of it, where the person goes to our class and says, wow, that's a really good teacher, because they got everything down, including the timing.
Now, there are other very tangible ways that this 80% will look different than the 20%. The first thing is you're probably not going to be doing as much time in language learning as you were before. And a lot of your language learning in the advanced levels is going to look more like just reading and being like having an aha moment, right? Just like, oh, I didn't realize that before. That's kind of cool. Moving on. Okay, it doesn't look like you sitting down with a textbook and just drilling words. It doesn't look like that. It's different. Another thing is you're not going back to your first language, hopefully at all, really. You're not going back to your first language. Everything that you do in English is wrestling with English, is learning in English. It's just very different in that sense.
And probably most importantly, you're learning mostly by interest and application. So you're looking for things that are already around you and doing that in the target language. So for example, we know a lot of people that are already in the advanced stages, near fluent, and their language learning process is them just watching a TV series that's really difficult for normal language learners to understand. Maybe like a documentary where they're really diving deep into this jargon of this industry of flying or something like that. They're not just watching something, but then they're also conducting their own research. They're also going out and speaking to people. They're also going out and having a conversation, producing it, writing it. Those are the kind of people that continue to get pushed towards fluency because they're applying it. They're doing things that interest them. They're not just grabbing another textbook off the shelf and then continuing to smash out more grammar textbooks.
In other words, they're not learning by necessity or for a test or by memorization. They are learning by doing. That's a huge difference. And I know that it's difficult in a lot of cultures. I know it's not the way the education system works in a lot of cultures, but this application of language is a great way to get a working knowledge that does not fade very easily. It doesn't fade as quickly as memorization does.
But a fair warning there is that some people, they find that actually quite difficult, where they get this open door to say, now you're able to do so many more things, and they're kind of frozen.
But some of you know exceptions to this. You know some people that just tore through the advanced levels just fine to fluency, and they did it very quickly. These people tend to be people with like a natural talent for learning languages. They just get it. It's like some people are good at math, some people are good at history. These people are just really good with language. There's some people where it's their job and they've been sent to a military language institute to learn, and it's being beat into their heads constantly, and they're not allowed to use their own language. Some people come from a very closely related language to English, and so for them it's not that big of a jump. There's not a ton of things that are super difficult to them compared to somebody like coming from Mandarin or somebody coming from Ukrainian or Russian. Those are far more difficult languages to come to English from.
Another one I would say is if a person has a very incentivized reason at all in order to study that language, like you said, a job, but also if somebody says, hey, I need you to be the person. So if you have a whole family that's moving to an English-speaking country and you are designated the person who has to kind of carry the family language-wise, well then obviously you're going to probably have more reason and more pressure and more incentive to tear through the upper levels of language, because all of it's going to go on you. If they have to go to a doctor's appointment, it's going to go on you. If they have to apply to a visa, it's going to go on you. And so as a result, if there's a lot of incentive there, obviously they're going to go a lot faster. This video is about the normal people out there, which is just a normal working adult that's trying to do a job while also trying to continue to progress towards fluency.
Because they want to. They want to, or they need to get to fluency. We're not talking about the people that just want to be able to order pizza. We're not talking about the individuals that are okay not knowing things or not filling out their own doctor's information. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking to people trying to strive for fluency. So for most of these people, most of these adult English language learners working a job, maybe they have a family, they are trying to get to fluency. For most of them, to speed up the process, okay, to speed up the process to get to fluency, there are some things you can do.
For example, you can make your home an English learning home. You can make your home an English island. We've talked about this on the channel before because it's incredibly important. If you don't give yourself a moment's rest from learning English, yes, you will learn English faster, but that means that, unfortunately, the reality of it is that you have to substitute some of your native language things, as in like playing games, with the target language. That's not just switching the language setting on the video game you're playing. That's changing your lifestyle to make sure that you are rubbing elbows with people of other speakers. You are bringing them into your home. You're having a night where all of you just speak the target language, being very intentional to create this environment for you.
Following English speaking influencers, like you're following that, you're posting in social media in English, like there's a lot of things you could do here. And we've talked about this before. You can find videos on that on our channel. Another thing would be to practice live with native English speakers as much as possible. As much as possible. And if you live somewhere where that's not possible, try to jump online and find those chat rooms with English speakers. Like, just do your best to work with and speak to native English speakers as much as possible. You've heard interviews that we've had with fluent speakers already, people who have already attained fluency. You've heard them say that that's what they did. They pushed and they went out and they talked to people who spoke the language natively. And that's the thing that probably made or broke their language learning ability.
Another one is read books consistently. I admit that I am not a terribly dedicated reader, but if you are striving for fluency, again, fluency, not just communication, then you have to be taking in a lot. You have to be consuming a lot of comprehensible input. And that means that you spend your time at the end of the day or in the middle of the day taking and reading English books, high quality English books, not just children's books anymore, so that you can then take the words and the phrases that you hear and read in those things, and then apply them into your active vocabulary. One way you can do this is use our Advanced English Vocabulary Study Guide.
And finally, another way to really help you guys speed up is work with a tutor. I know tutors are expensive. It's because you're paying for their time with you and the time that they spend for you outside of that class hour. They are expensive. But working with a tutor who knows where you are, they can assess your language, they can work on your weaknesses, they can strengthen your weaknesses, and then teach you new things that you need in a very organized manner, so you don't have to go and spend all of your time like searching all that free content out there and trying to piecemeal together some kind of English language learning journey. They will do that for you. And that is so helpful for saving time. Some of you would rather spend the time than the money. I get that. But if you are a working adult, you're trying to reach fluency in the next year or two, then one of the best ways you can do that is by hiring a tutor and working with them closely for hopefully more than once a week. Once a week classes with a tutor, it will do something if you are consistently showing up every day to study for yourself. If you are not studying outside of that tutor hour, you need to have a lot more tutoring hours.
So, guys, the 80-20 rule, it can be a crushing rule when it comes to language learning, but we hope that you can see in another light, which is that your journey is largely just beginning, and now is the time that you get to continue to refine and use the tools that you've gained over the course of your language journey. So picture all of the vocabulary, all of the sentence structures, all of the history that you've been given. like tools in a tool belt. Now it's the time that you start building a house. Now it's the time that you start building something that will last for a very, very long time. If you never use those tools, they'll get rusty and you won't know how to use them very well. That's the vocabulary, that's the grammar, that's the sentence structures that is in the beginner and intermediate levels. So now for you guys, now starts the time where you take those tools out and you start working on that house.
It's an amazing journey. It is grueling. It is difficult at times. It feels like you're going nowhere at other times, but at the same time, it is very rewarding in how deeply you can understand something and how many connections you can make and how that can be useful to a lot of people. You can help a lot of people with that same understanding. So going for it, if this is what you're going for, it is well worth that journey. We really hope you're not discouraged by that, but know that there's a lot of people striving for the same thing, a very similar thing, and we can encourage each other in that journey.
And if you are looking for a place, a person, a program, just some accountability, we have our program, Fluency Fast Track, where we meet regularly with our people to try to get them to get to fluency faster. It's a great community. We're constantly adding to it. So if you are interested, you can check out that and the description below.
All right, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.